access those records, and are the MSDS sheets located or information located at the same area, or is this one of those where we all call into some company and say press 1 for Lithuanian, press 2 for so how does the public in a reasonable manner access the information that would be relevant to their area?
It's a very good question, Mr. Chairman, Representative Letson. The MSD sheets are listed on the ODNR website, and that was a requirement of the statute 165. In order to go see the well chart and the well ticket, you have to access what is called a public record, a well completion report. Also, the Department of Natural Resources, the Oil and Gas Regulatory Program, maintains a world-class system of called the well locator files, in which you can go and use their RBDMS database system to do research on any well drilled in the state of Ohio, including the completion reports and anything else you want to know, production records, anything about that well, logs, the whole deal. And you can still go on the website and do that. If I wanted to know if there was a well being drilled next to me and I want to know what was being done on that frac job, I would go to the Department of Natural Resources and I would say, I want the well completion report for this permit number, this well drilled in this township of this county.
Follow again, sir. Thank you. Turning to the well, the Mahoning Valley well, the Mahoning County well in question, and what Mr. Hill has said about the PSI ratings of the individual wells, and with some minuscule understanding that I have that DNR, and Mr. Hill, you might as well stand up because you're the one that's going to answer it. Mr. Stewart's going to go, you. I want to know about how the PSI limits are set. I want to know what happens if they are exceeded. I want to know if you can ask for waivers to increase the pressure that your particular well is pushing. So how are they set? Who sets them? And what happens when we exceed them? And can we ask for forgiveness rather than permission, or can we ask for permission?
Thank you very much, Senator, Mr. Lesson. Tom Tomastik, who works for the Department of Natural Resources, heads up the UIC program. And when we apply for a permit, we tell him at the top perforated interval, the top of the zone we're going to inject into, and then the state of Ohio has calculated a formula, and it's based on depth. And they take the depth of the formations being injected into, they run it through their calculation, and they give us a top pressure. Now, that's based on the fact that they're saying that the water that comes into a facility is very briny, and if it has a lot of brine, it makes it heavier. If it's heavier, it goes in the ground easier. Without getting into the weeds on the engineering, they're calculating that this water is very heavy. That skews the calculation. It makes the calculation so that we get a lower injection pressure. So to answer your question, the Department of Natural Resources has a formula. I think anyone would agree that it's a very conservative formula, that they give us a low pressure, and that's called a parting pressure. And the reason they do that is they want to make sure when we're injecting water into these formations that we're not getting to a pressure that exceeds the parting pressure and causes the well to fracture. So they're making us below that. Now, one of the things that they just changed in the permitting process a few weeks or months ago is that any new wells going forward, they have to be monitored, not by man or not. They have to have a recording chart, just like the frac charts Tom was referring to when we do frac jobs. There's going to be a chart, a continuous 24-hour chart, so that anyone can walk into an injection facility and see the chart on the wall or ask for the chart to prove that those pressures had not been exceeded. Now, you ask what can we ask to be that changed? The UIC program has a mechanism where if you're not accepting very heavy specific gravity brine, but it's a lighter brine, you can give them a sample of your water and they can adjust your pressures. But the pressure they use, the standard pressure they use, they're saying you're going in there, you're going to be putting in very heavy water, and that causes a lower injection pressure. So, but going forward on new wells, there will be continuous 24-hour monitoring that we will have to turn in.
Lastly, the method of, is there a method for a waiver or a way to request pressure deviation increase?
Yes, there is a mechanism, and again, we can ask for it, I think, once a quarter, and you take samples of the water that you're accepting, and you have an independent laboratory measure the specific gravity, and if you can prove to them that they should be using a different specific gravity in your formula, you can ask for a waiver. But you have to continually give them samples so that you can maintain that waiver. It's not a carte blanche, I got it waived, and then tomorrow I'll bring in different water. You have to continually ask for that waiver.
Lastly, Mr. Chair, back to Mr. Stewart. You indicate in your testimony that fracking has a history in Ohio of some 60-plus years. My understanding is that there is a difference between the early fracking, which I will describe as vertical fracking, versus what we're going on today, which is horizontal fracking. And could you give me when the switch over from the old method of fracturing to the new directional drilling, and from the new directional drilling to the new directional horizontal fracturing?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lutzen, that rock down there is 6,000 or 7,000 feet. Doesn't know whether a pipe's going through it vertically or whether it's going through horizontally. It makes no difference to that reservoir. All it knows is that somebody perforated a hole, a round hole, at some point in that reservoir rock and applied a hydraulic pressure to it. That reservoir will not behave any differently, hydraulically fracturing, if it's vertical or with it's horizontal. The only thing about horizontal drilling is that it exponentially increases the face of the reservoir rock to the wellbore. And the way to think of a horizontal well is like 25 wells inside one wellbore. The frac job that is applied in 1952 in the state of Ohio is the exact same principle as being applied today anywhere. It's a hydraulic fracture job. You apply hydraulic pressure to bring a break in the rock. And it's the same way. Nothing has changed as far as how hydraulic fracturing and rock mechanics interact with each other.
The history, when did we go horizontal on fracturing in the country, in the state?
Horizontal drilling, obviously we've been drilling vertical wells now for 150 years. Horizontal drilling is a process that really began as a production process in the Permian Basin, the Austin Chalk area of South Texas. And it was a production process where they went into very old fields. For example, they thought the Austin Chalk was done, depleted. And they started horizontally cutting it, and they made much new, greater production. Again, because horizontal drilling is like drilling your frac job, is one way to think of it. Then they started applying it to completion techniques in the resource shale play, particularly the Barnett of North Texas and around Dallas-Fort Worth, in which they went along the horizontal lateral, and at various points along the horizontal lateral completed a well. Each one of those acts like an individual well within the shale bed. And they complete a well, frack it, complete a well, frack it, complete a well, frack it. So in effect, like 25 wells. Am I correct here? It's like 25 wells that are being done inside one well bore. Horizontal drilling has been applied in the Marcellus shale play for the last 6 years. The very first Marcellus well of the Martin era was actually a vertical well in Washington County, Pennsylvania. One of my members made the decision they thought they had a dry hole down below. They made a decision to try to frack the Marcellus and see how it would behave. They did it vertically, made just one great well, and that kicked off the Marcellus boom, Range Resources in Pennsylvania. But again, there's this myth out there that somehow this term horizontal hydrofracking or whatever, there's nobody in industry that understands what horizontal hydrofracking is. it's a term that nobody uses except the ones you see in the media. A frac job's a frac job. Have we gotten more sophisticated on how to protect the reservoir? Yeah. Have we gotten more sophisticated on how to place proppant back into the frac job? Yes. When my father did his first frac job in 1954 in Marion Township, Hocking County, they used crude oil as the medium. The thinking was, well, crude oil is native to the reservoir, so we couldn't hurt it. Except crude oil is sort of flammable, and it wasn't a good process. And actually, my father did one of the very first jobs in Marion Township, Hocking County, using water, 1956, Dobmeyer number 4. Made a great well when they thought it was a dry hole. That process has essentially not changed. Scale's gotten bigger, better ways to do things. That's how technology develops. Same principle. Same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman. Tom, thank you very much for giving us a great example of what a filibuster is. Let me ask you a couple of questions. You referenced my father's bill in 1984, 501, House Bill 501, the ponds for evaporation pits that were being used. The industry claimed that there would be, along with the Chamber of Commerce, claimed that there would be an advent of 200,000 jobs because of the drilling of the Marcellus and Utica Shale. And now, because of what you just mentioned, as a matter of fact, you just mentioned in Washington County where the individual drilled a vertical well, that we're finding out now that because of an injection well there, the safe area of the state, according to the ODNR and the industry, we now have valid proof that there are earthquakes in that section of the state. Are you aware of what's going on there, A? And then B, with the fact that you needed to be brought to the legislature because of 501, because the industry was in fact